Imagine a world without eyelids closing. Well, picture a human experience where the sun sets, but the mind does not. Darkness falls, yet consciousness remains. A constant, unwavering flame. There is no longer a gentle surrender to slumber. There are no dreams to visit. The daily cycle of waking and sleeping has been severed. Humans simply continue. This is not a world of frantic energy. It is a world of quiet continuation. A persistent, unending state of being awake. The very concept of rest has become a relic, a biological function lost to time, like an appendix we no longer need. In this thought experiment, we will explore the silent consequences of such a profound change. This journey begins with a simple question. What if humanity as a species evolved beyond the need for sleep? What would we gain? And more importantly, what would we lose? We often see sleep as downtime. We view it as a period of inactivity. It is a biological tax we must pay for the privilege of a conscious day. But is it merely a pause, or is it an essential process that defines our very nature? We will explore the science behind this fundamental pillar of life. We will investigate the delicate biological machinery that sleep maintains. We will witness how its absence would methodically unravel the fabric of our minds, our bodies, and our societies. This exploration will not be one of dramatic catastrophe. It will be a calm collapse, a slow, creeping decay that begins within the deepest recesses of the brain. We will follow the logical progression from the initial surge of a 24-hour society to the gradual erosion of sanity. The primary themes of our inquiry are woven into the very fabric of our being. First, we will confront biology. Sleep is not a passive state. It is an active and intricate ballet of neurological repair and maintenance. It is the brain's private workshop, where memories are sorted, toxins are cleared, emotional circuits are rebalanced. We will examine what happens to the billions of neurons when this nightly restoration ceases. Next, we will turn our gaze to psychology. Sanity is a delicate balance, maintained by the rhythms of rest and activity. What happens when this balance is permanently broken? We will explore the rise of aggression, paranoia, emotional instability. From the individual, we expand to society. We will chart the social breakdown that follows. Endless productivity gives way to endless conflict. Finally, a darker philosophical conclusion. What does it mean to be human without the nightly surrender of the self? Sleep is not a sign of weakness. It is not a design flaw to be overcome. It is a biological necessity, as vital as air and water. Table of Contents, Part 2, Act 1, The Biology of Sleep. 1. The brain's nightly housekeeping. 2. The loom of memory. 3. The emotional thermostat. 4. The rhythms of life. Imagine your brain as a bustling city that operates all day. By the end of this day, the streets are filled with metabolic byproducts, the waste generated by its tireless work. Sleep initiates a vital sanitation process. This process is known as the glymphatic system. Without this nightly clearance, waste products, including proteins like amyloid beta, would accumulate relentlessly. This buildup is not a trivial matter. It is a slow, silent poison. In the beginning, its effects would be subtle, a slight mental fog. But as days turn into weeks and weeks into months of sleeplessness, the accumulation becomes critical. The intricate pathways of thought would become clogged. The speed and efficiency of neural communication would falter. It would be like a city slowly drowning in its own refuse, its functions grinding to a halt, not from external attack, but from internal neglect. Another crucial process during sleep is synaptic homeostasis. Throughout our waking hours, our brains form new connections, but it cannot continue indefinitely. Our brains would become oversaturated, like a hard drive with no remaining space. Deep sleep performs a delicate pruning. It weakens less important synaptic connections, making room for new learning the next day. Without nightly pruning, circuits become noisy and chaotic. The ability to form new memories would be severely compromised. Learning would become an impossible task. The mind would be trapped in perpetual saturation, unable to distinguish significant information from background noise. Sleep is not just for cleaning, it is the master weaver of our memories. These are initially stored in a temporary, fragile form, primarily in the hippocampus. Think of the hippocampus as a short-term data buffer, with limited capacity. For experiences to become lasting memories, they must be transferred to the neocortex. This transfer is memory consolidation. It happens almost exclusively during sleep. During deep non-REM sleep, the brain replays neural patterns of recent events. This repetition strengthens neural pathways, integrating them into long-term networks. Without nightly consolidation, days become disconnected moments. Our past would simply fade away. The prefrontal cortex acts as a brake on our more primitive emotional centers, like the amygdala. However, sustained wakefulness weakens this connection. Without sleep, the amygdala becomes hyperactive. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex loses its authority. Minor frustrations can trigger intense anger. Small worries can spiral into overwhelming anxiety. The world is perceived through a lens of heightened negativity and threat. It is specifically during REM sleep that our brain processes the emotional charge of the day's events. It lets us keep the lesson from a difficult experience without having to carry the full weight of its emotional pain forever. In a world where sleep has vanished, this emotional processing would never occur. The psychic wounds of each day would accumulate, raw and unhealed. Our biology is governed by intricate rhythms, the most fundamental of which is the circadian rhythm. This is our internal 24-hour clock. It orchestrates a vast array of bodily functions. It is the master conductor of our biological orchestra, ensuring every instrument plays in time. In a world without sleep, this master clock would become desynchronized. The body would be in a state of constant internal jet lag, a chaotic condition where different biological systems are working against each other. The risk of chronic illnesses such as heart disease, diabetes, and cancer would skyrocket. Our physical bodies would begin to break down. The quiet collapse would not only be mental but also deeply physical. The absence of sleep is the absence of biological harmony, a slow but certain path towards systemic failure and decay. In the first years after the Great Change, the world did not descend into chaos. Instead, it bloomed into a strange and brilliant new form of civilization. The night, once a domain of rest and inactivity, was now just another phase of the day. Cities that once pulsed with a rhythm of work and sleep now hummed with a constant, unwavering energy. The concept of closing time became archaic. Shops, offices, entertainment venues remained open, welcoming a populace that no longer had a reason to go home. Streetlights now illuminated children playing, neighbors conversing at 3 in the morning. Humanity had been gifted an extra 8 hours each day. It felt like a golden age. The most profound and immediate impact of a sleepless world was felt in the global economy. Productivity did not just increase, it underwent a quantum leap. The traditional two-shift system was replaced by a fluid model of continuous labor. Workers would simply put in their allotted hours, often extended from 8 to 10 or 12. While productivity soared, the sheer abundance of available work hours began to devalue the individual worker's time. Wages in many sectors stagnated. A new class of endurance worker emerged, capable of monitoring intricate systems for 12 or 16 hours straight without a dip in concentration. However, this came with a subtle cost. While focus was sustained, creativity and innovative problem-solving began to show a slow decline. The world was becoming incredibly efficient at executing existing ideas, but increasingly poor at generating new ones. The disappearance of sleep fundamentally altered the concepts of privacy and security. The ever-open eye of the state was no longer a metaphor. It was a technological reality. Drones patrolled perpetually illuminated skies. AI-powered cameras monitored the ceaselessly active streets. The distinction between public and private space began to blur. People began to self-censor, shaped by constant surveillance. Spontaneity faded, replaced by a guarded, performative life. This lack of a true mental backstage created a subtle but profound exhaustion. The first generation of the sleepless had forgotten tiredness, but reported a strange hollowness. Stretched thin, inner resources depleted. While society celebrated its newfound productivity, the first physiological warning signs began to appear, subtle and easily dismissed. There was a notable rise in metabolic disorders. The immune system also showed signs of weakening. Emotionally, the changes were more pronounced. People had shorter tempers. The capacity for empathy seemed to be eroding. These first cracks were largely ignored. No one connected the dots back to the one fundamental change that underpinned their entire civilization. They did not understand that these were not isolated problems, but the first tremors of a catastrophic neurological and biological failure. The calm collapse had begun, with 1,000 tiny, imperceptible fractures in the human machine. Decades after the Great Change, the human mind, deprived of its nightly emotional reset for a lifetime, began to fray in predictable and dangerous ways. The most noticeable change was a dramatic loss of impulse control. It could no longer effectively regulate the primal urges rising from the amygdala. The result was a population prone to sudden, unprovoked outbursts of aggression, road rage, public arguments. Spontaneous acts of violence became common. The justice system was overwhelmed. Prisons filled with people who had lost the biological ability to control their tempers. In a world without the natural downtime of sleep, the mind developed an insatiable appetite for stimulation. Silence became terrifying. To avoid this, people became addicted to noise, a constant, overwhelming stream of information and sensation. Content became faster, louder, and more intense. Nuance and complexity were abandoned in favor of shocking headlines, visceral imagery, and emotionally charged sound bites. The most dangerous consequence of this addiction was the rise of new, potent forms of stimulants. These substances became a shadow currency in the sleepless world. One of the most profound and tragic consequences of the fraying mind was the steady decay of empathy. People began to view others not as fellow beings with rich inner lives, but as objects, obstacles to their own desires, or tools for achieving them. The breakdown of empathy was most visible within the family structure. Parents found it difficult to attune to the needs of their children. The state attempted to intervene, creating state-run communal centers where children were raised. This, however, only exacerbated the problem. It institutionalized the absence of love. Prolonged sleeplessness began to dissolve the very coherence of the self. The continuity of consciousness was broken by a failure of memory and integration. Individuals started to experience a strange form of psychological dissociation. Without dreams, an unfiltered stream of bizarre thoughts and paranoid ideations began to bleed into waking consciousness. People would hear voices. People would see things that were not there. The calm collapse was now fully underway, driven not by an external enemy, but by the implosion of millions of individual minds, each shattering in the silent, unending glare of a world that had forgotten how to rest. A civilization that never sleeps consumes resources at a terrifying and unsustainable rate. The primary battleground was for energy. This insatiable demand for energy became a primary driver of geopolitical conflict. The calm, globalized world gave way to a new era of aggressive nationalism and resource hoarding. Another, more subtle resource became the subject of a new kind of war: attention. The goal was to control not territory, but perception. Society fractured into warring digital tribes, each convinced of its own righteousness and the malevolence of the others. The culmination of the societal collapse was the emergence of endless war. Warfare was transformed by the sleepless soldier. Military operations ran around the clock. Battles became grueling, non-stop attrition. The psychological toll of combat was amplified beyond endurance. Sleep-deprived soldiers couldn't process trauma and broke quickly, yet broken soldiers were easily replaced. The military became a meat grinder, generation after generation. The calm collapse reached a roaring, violent crescendo, a testament to a species that traded its humanity for the illusion of limitless potential. Our journey into this sleepless world leads us to a final, bleak, philosophical synthesis. Without the chaotic, creative engine of dreams, the human imagination would inevitably atrophy. Humanity would become a species of brilliant executors, but utterly incapable of inventing anything truly new. In a sleepless state, consciousness would flatten into a thin, reactive surface. The deep, resonant sense of self would evaporate, replaced by a more primitive, animalistic awareness. Humanity would evolve not into a higher state of being, but devolve into a more efficient, far less complex organism. No longer the creatures who once wrote poetry, pondered the stars, or dreamed of a better future. This dark thought experiment brings us to a simple and inescapable conclusion. Sleep is not a biological inconvenience. It is not weakness. It is a fundamental, non-negotiable pillar of our biology, as essential to our existence as oxygen, water, food. It is the invisible process that makes everything else possible. Our health, our sanity, our memories, our relationships, our creativity, and our compassion. To be human is to be bound by these biological rhythms. They are not chains that hold us back, but anchors that keep us tethered to our sanity, our health, and our shared reality. The surrender to sleep is an act of profound wisdom and humility. The need for rest is not a problem to be solved. It is a fundamental truth to be respected.